This video, I'm going to just show a simple example of how a URL change can expose user data. And then we'll also mention at the end of the video the difference between authentication and authorization. So we'll start off by showing you the index.php page. So what we have is a session, so we can store who's logged in. In this line here, we simulate Alice being logged in by storing her user ID. So this represents authentication in a real life application or website. This happens after logging in or login. So for this session, the authenticated user ID is 1. And here we're just echoing, showing which user is logged in. And then we also have a link to the profile page using the user's ID in the URL. So I'll show you what this looks like in the browser. And I'll zoom in just a little bit. So he's just showing some information that Alice is logged in. So I've started the local PHP server as well, and so that's running. And I'll show you what happens when we click on my profile. So it pretty much takes Alice to her profile, and you can see the URL in the top of the address bar. Okay, let me also show you what the database looks like. So what we have is this simple query, really creating a simple demo database called demo. And inside it, we have a users table with 2 columns, an integer ID and a username stored in as a string. We then insert 2 example records, Alice with ID 1 and Bob with ID 2. So what we really want is just a simple application. So we have predictable data to work with when loading the user's profile. And this is what the table looks like when we run our query. Okay, let's come back to the profile.php. So let's just have a look at what we have at the moment. We are just reading the user's ID directly from the URL query string. And the database credentials are stored from a separate configuration file called database.config.php. And then we create the connection to the MySQL database using those credentials that are saved here. So we've just got the host user, password, and the database name. Then the application runs a SQL query from the ID from the URL that we fetched from the user's record right here at the top, at the start. And this converts the database result into a PHP query that we can work with, so this line. And then we send out the username is displayed to the page, just like what we saw here. Okay, so the page takes the ID from the URL and then sends it, or uses it directly to the database query. The problem is that this ID is coming from the user directly, and then we're using that to query the database. So the server is never checking if they're allowed to access that profile. And this is too much trust we are giving the client. So let's have a look at where the problem happens is if I actually change that ID to 2, which is another user. We can see that now we have, Bob has access. So I didn't log in as Bob. We actually logged in as Alice, but all we did was just change that number in the URL, which takes us to that first title of this video, which is how a simple URL change can expose user data. So we're able to see another person's profile by just changing the URL. So the issue really is that this is called an insecure direct object reference, where the application trusts the user input instead of checking for ownership. So that's what we're going to fix in this video. So we're going to go to profile. Let's go to profile. And I'm just going to copy some lines I would like to include at the start to start the session so that the page can read logged in user ID from this session. Additionally, I'm going to copy more code and paste it right here. This is where we are going to be checking at the server side instead of just relying on information we get directly from the user. So this line here, it reads the authenticated user's ID from this session and stores it in a variable called logged in ID. Next, what we want to do is we want to check that the requested ID that's coming from the URL, which was 1 or 2, is if it's not equal to the authenticated user's ID that we got from the session. In that case, we will block access or send out access denied and then exit. So then no querying of the database is happening if this check fails. So let's save and refresh the page and check what happens. So now when we refresh, we get access denied because now the server checks that the requested profile belongs to the logged in user, and if it's not, it blocks the access. So let's come back to the title of the video again and say authentication, you check what you're allowed to access, okay? And then authorization, which is happening here, is you check what you're allowed to access. So that's what we've added to this video to complete that we both have authentication and authorization. I hope this video was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.